Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being on time or early. I know some of you are early. I appreciate that. I'm Linda Tyler, the Gracious Vegan, and we're here tonight to discuss Thanksgiving. The name of the 1 hour Zoom class is Smart Planning for a Plant-Based Thanksgiving. So we are going to do our darndest to help solve some of the challenges that you talked about, and I'm going to show you some of the challenges that folks shared with us, and then we're going to go through the handout that I sent, and also I have some slides as well. So I'm going to switch over to my slides, which will guide us through the discussion. So let's start here. Whoop, I don't know what I did there. Okay. All right, so I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. All right. Um, okay, so I wanted to thank Donna Spencer, who is the co-host. She's going to help us manage the Zoom meeting, and she will, if you put some things in chat, she and I will both be reading from those. So thank you, Donna. And she is the creator of plentifulfare.com. So please check that out if you want. We'll be mentioning a few of her recipes. So you may be guided over to her site if you like the sound of some of her recipes as well. And then here's how we're going to run the session. I'm going to share that three-stage process for planning and executing a Thanksgiving dinner. And then lots on menu suggestions. That was a very popular challenge. So we will think about good menu selections. And then there are some tough challenges that, again, I'm hoping we crowdsource together through the chat. You don't have to, but if you have ideas, they will be very helpful to someone. So your challenges have informed this session. A lot of people registered for the class. A lot of people want to watch it on recording. I have like somebody in England and Ireland, and they can't watch this live in the middle of the night, so they're looking forward to the recording. But figuring out what to make, getting everything ready at the same time, being the only vegan in the room, making delicious food to please even omnivores. Main dish ideas, planning a menu that appeals to everyone. It's hard to get them ready at the same time. Dining with mostly carnivores, different diets, and making a green bean casserole that's delicious. So I'm hoping to help solve these and others. And in fact, here I sort of did an informal tally of the challenges that people shared. And by far the most popular topic with 40 or more was menu choices for people with different diets and preferences. So putting together that menu. And then folks wanted, general menu planning with really good plant-based dishes. The third was getting everything on the table hot at the same time. I know that is tough. A great main dish, planning how to cook everything. Specifically, some questions about side dishes or gravy or desserts. We'll talk about that. A few people were cooking only for themselves. So if we have time, we will talk about that. Some people mentioned a green bean casserole. And then there were miscellaneous other challenges. So it was kind of clear what the most people wanted help with, and I hope we address that. So if you've looked at the handout yet, and Donna put it at the top of the chat, you can download it there if you didn't download it from the reminder emails. But it's basically a three-stage process that I use anyway, and from what I can tell from other people who shared their planning process with me, it was similar. I didn't give you a template in a particular program because I don't think template is as important as thinking the conceptual process here, and it's not complicated, but I would suggest that you do all three stages. They do overlap because the same menu is in all of them, but they are appropriate at different stages. So making the menu plan, obviously you need to know who the guests are, what their diets or allergies are. Um, I always think it's really important too that you think about what's important to you, if you, especially if you're the main cook. You should be happy with your menu. And, for example, I have a particular favorite carrot and parsnip side dish. I really like it, and I have to julienne all the carrots and parsnips, so I don't make it other than Thanksgiving. That's the only time I make it. Um, so I put it in the menu because that's my favorite. So you can do that. Or so you need to sort of decide like what's important to you too. That should go into the mix. And then I would draft that menu and then start to talk to the others, especially it's a great idea to get others to bring dishes if you can and dole out some of the harder things if you want to them. Um, but also talk to them as well about their diets or their allergies and get them to help you brainstorm what would be good. And then obviously you want to get to a final menu plan as soon as you can. So, some of the things that might, it's important not to take the whole burden on yourself, but get people to think with you and certainly get other people to bring dishes if that works for you. Okay, so let's go to the big question about what to make. Um, so one of the first things I try not to do, and I have um, succeeded for the most part, is try to avoid multiple versions of the same dish. So, for example, mashed potatoes. You don't have to make vegan mashed potatoes, in my opinion, and dairy, centered mashed potatoes um, unless someone else is bringing some mashed potatoes and they use butter or sour cream, and then you want some and you have to make your own. It's best if you can figure out how not to duplicate as much as possible. So, for the side dishes, for the green vegetables or the orange vegetables, um, and the mashed potatoes, if you can work with uh, people who might be bringing those and say, hey, could you use vegan butter? Or could you use, if they're going to use butter, sometimes they do, or could you make it vegan? Um, that's the best way to save efficiency is to not duplicate. I actually now make a really good mushroom gravy. It's on my site. It's in the handout, the special mushroom gravy. And everybody likes that as well. So I don't even worry about duplicating gravy. But that is, I think, that would be the first line of, being efficient is to try to avoid multiple versions of the same dish. And then, as I said, brainstorming with guests to come up with solutions. And then also asking ChatGPT or other or your favorite AI companion for help is really helpful. Like if you say I have somebody with a soy and nut allergy, and I want to make these types of dishes for Thanksgiving. Can you recommend some dishes? And it'll also spit out some recipes if you're feeling lucky and you want to trust ChatGPT's recipe, or you can sort of get ideas there. And if you don't like the first thing ChatGPT comes up with, give it feedback and have it do it again. So it doesn't get its feelings hurt, which is the nice thing about those things. So, all sorts of ways to ask for help there. Um, on the right side of this screen and in the handout is my idea of a minimally complete uh, Thanksgiving menu. And of course, on the handout at the bottom right, I have optional menu additions. Some people have a lot more on the table than this basic, but for me, this is sort of a basic traditional Thanksgiving menu. and anyone would be very pleased to have that. You don't need more than one dessert. A lot of people assume, oh my God, I have to make two or three desserts. You don't have to. Um, and sometimes people spend a lot of time on appetizers, but really you don't want people to get full. So I really go for just light appetizers, sometimes hardly any if it's just a small group, but that's up to you. And you can keep the beverages simple as well. So in keeping with this idea of efficiency, this is my like minimally complete. It doesn't have to be mashed potatoes, but they're nice. Everybody likes mashed potatoes, and most people don't get freshly made mashed potatoes much. So I like to go ahead and do it. All right, why don't I pause and see if there are any, the next slide and the next discussion is actual dishes and ideas for dishes. But let me pause here in terms of that first part of the process, stage one of putting your menu plan together, and then this slide, which is some basic ideas about menu. If you have any questions, just put it into the chat, and I will try to answer those at this point. If not, we'll go on to menu ideas, which I know is important to people. Okay, I'm not seeing anything new in the chat. So, oh, okay, somebody would like the carrot parsnip recipe. I will share that tomorrow. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and go to the next slide then. All right, menu ideas. So on the second page of the handout, if you printed it out or if you're looking at it in another window on your computer, I have actual menu ideas. Obviously, this is not the entire universe of menu ideas for plant-based Thanksgiving, but it's sort of my take and a start on the kinds of things you can think about. So, um, the plant-based main dish, there are lots and lots of possibilities. I find that the shepherd's pie and the vegetable pot pie are very popular. Of course, the shepherd's pie has mashed potatoes, so you can choose if you're all plant-based and you're all going to have the shepherd's pie, you don't have to make separate mashed potatoes, but that is usually popular. I like it when even if I'm going somewhere and there's going to be omnivores and there's going to be a turkey, um, they'll want it as a side dish. It'll look so good as a dish. So you can do that. You can do, my quinoa cakes are more like fritters. They're not fried, they're baked, but there's sort of a whole family of fritter slash cake slash patties that are possible as well as a main dish. And of course, they taste really good with gravy on them. So that's a nice combination there. You can do different kinds of casseroles. On my site, I have the spaghetti squash with cashew ricotta, spinach, and peas. That's what I'm making this year. Last year, I made the succotash gratin. Um, Lots of ways. And then finally, there's stuffed vegetables. Those are really good for main dish too. Stuffed acorn squash, stuffed delicata squash. You can even do stuffed uh, butternut squash. Lots of different ways to do that. So if you have other main dish ideas, now would be the time to put those in the chat. Other plant-based main dish ideas, because we're really trying to help those folks who ask for a good plant-based main dish. And if none of the ones I have mentioned sound good to you, maybe somebody else has, whoops, let me go back here. Maybe somebody else has, I'm not able, oh, there's the chat. If you have other ideas for main dishes, just put those in the chat. All right, the turkey question. This is a very personal thing. Some people are fine, some plant-based eaters are fine making a turkey. Um, I do not like to touch turkeys myself. So if I'm having a lot of people who expect turkey, I ask somebody to make it and bring it. For just a few guests who eat meat, if they, really want some meat, sometimes I ask somebody to go get a rotisserie chicken, and the meat eating guests are fine with that. And it's much less, it doesn't like make the kitchen smell, and it doesn't create huge greasy pans and the expectation of using the drippings for gravy. So that is that's a solution I like. But if you are all plant-based and you don't need a turkey, that's great. I'm not a huge fan of the tofurkey substitute. I would rather have a main dish like the kind I talked about. But that again is a personal thing. And so, I think Thanksgiving traditions have been loosening and loosening, so you can do, as you like. Um, People who are low carb, first ask them to bring something and talk to them beforehand. Some people suspend their low carb lifestyle for Thanksgiving. Some try to stick to it. I mean, even a traditional Thanksgiving, let alone, is tough in terms of avoiding carbs because, traditional Thanksgiving has a lot of bread, has a lot of potatoes. So they're going to have it tough either way. But you could, think about using mushrooms or cauliflower or tofu, green beans, all sorts of vegetables that are on the lower carb and can be made very delicious. Stuffed portobello mushrooms would be a great main dish. Um, Cauliflower steaks. There are things that they would enjoy. So if they're willing to help make it, that would be great. Um, for dessert, something like baked apples or baked pears or apple compote or pear compote, those would be good. Tofu, chocolate pudding. So there are some ways to accommodate the low carb guests, but again, I would try to set expectations with them and get them involved in the planning. Now, children, I don't have a lot of experience with children at Thanksgiving, so this is where I'm hoping we really do get um, some participation and get your ideas. I know there's mac and cheese. They love mac and cheese usually, mashed potatoes. You can make cornbread muffins for the little kids or some simple salads, some simple, peas and corn, um, maybe some baked tofu nuggets or some kind of chicken substitute for kids. Donna, maybe I don't know if you have some ideas for kids at Thanksgiving, dishes that really work well.
Yeah, I have two grandchildren and I'm responsible for 3 meals a day for each of them. So I'm always experimenting with tofu nuggets with potatoes or I have a couple of those recipes on my site. I'm going to dig those up for everyone. But I've got some quinoa muffins that they love, quinoa blueberry muffins that they absolutely love. And they also love these beet blueberry pancakes that I make.
Mm,
And there's nothing that says that, it has to be Thanksgiving themed. I mean, so they have a couple of
yeah,
pancakes at the meal that are healthy and plant-based. I think that that's perfectly acceptable. I'd rather give them that than something that isn't plant-based and
yeah,
that's not very healthy for them. I'd rather them eat beet blueberry pancakes. Um,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know.
that's good. Yes. And someone says, leave it up to the parents. They know best. That's another good idea. Just ask the parents to bring food for the kids.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of delegating. Excellent. All right. So when you're invited to someone's Thanksgiving, what to take? I usually take a plant-based main dish so that I will be, I'll have a main dish, which is important. And then I discuss with them about desserts. Is the dessert going to be plant-based? And if not, maybe I'll make a dessert as well. And then I will ask them about at least, will some of the side dishes be vegan? So do you want to discuss it with them? And usually I take at least two things. So I'll have a main dish and a dessert and then hope for a few other side dishes. So I think any of the main dishes that we mentioned before would be great to take. So or any others that you can think of, I think are great. And then other challenges, we talked a little bit about allergies, but of course that, it depends on what the allergies are. And remember that I don't know if most of you know there is soy-free tofu now that's more available than it used to be. So you can check in your area. If
Wow.
somebody's allergic to soy, you can still use tofu. I think some brands are made with fava beans.
Wow.
And so that's a possibility. But again, and then with if they're allergic to tree nuts, usually there's a solution you can use seeds with. So, most recipes, I'm happy if you email me at any point after this, like what could I substitute for almonds in X, Y, or Z? Even almond flour, there are some good substitute ideas. So, don't give up on your favorite recipes before you discuss with ChatGPT or with me. Um, there are often good substitutes. But it is when I hear people who say they can't eat soy and they can't eat nuts, it's like,
Yeah.
help me. That's always a disappointment. But again, get them to help as well, get them to bring something. All right. So I hope some of the specific menu ideas you have, it's menu questions have been answered. I did want to highlight on that second page of the handout, the top right, that I do have a recipe on my site for mashed potatoes. I use some tahini in there to give some of that richness that, a lot of people use butter and sour cream. I don't use that. So it's also, I think, a really good method for mashed potatoes, especially if you have a KitchenAid mixer. Really good. I have a green bean casserole, in my opinion, to die for.
Oh,
Totally healthy, plant-based, even with a crispy crust on the top that's oniony, like those fried onions, but nothing
wow.
is fried. So check that out. I have a dressing, a bread dressing. If you're making it outside of the turkey, it's not stuffing, it's a dressing. If you want to use that. By the way, there are like gluten-free bread cubes. If you have gluten-free people and you need to make a dressing, you can use those. I have two gravies, an easy gravy and a special mushroom gravy. Um, those are both delicious, but I really like the mushroom gravy. And as I said, I only make it once a year. And it actually makes enough where I can freeze some usually and have it in January, December or January. So I do like that. So I wanted to highlight those. And then also in that right column, easy appetizers, just some olives or nuts, or for some reason my husband likes gherkins on before Thanksgiving, tapenade, or just anything, any simple spreads or dips. Um, And then I some non-alcoholic beverages. These are just some recipes I have on hand, but again, you could ask ChatGPT for some ideas. And then desserts, if you saw my last newsletter, I really like my pumpkin pie recipe. We made that in my class on pumpkin recently. Apple pie, apple crisp, chocolate cake. Donna has a very good chocolate cake recipe. Donna, maybe you could put that recipe booklet that's for sale on your site there in the chat. A chocolate caprese torte that is super good. Um, and then on the left-hand side, side dishes, I just sort of go over generally the different vegetables um, and different kinds of side dishes with flavor profiles. The cranberry sauce I love is called ginger pear cranberry sauce on all recipes. I don't use it, it does call for white sugar. I use usually agave syrup and much less than the recipe calls for. So I make it a little healthier that way, but strawberries are super, super sour, so you have to sweeten them in some way. And the times I have tried sweetening them with just straight dates did not go well. Unfortunately, the texture really came in very, very thick and not good. Laura's asking any way to make a healthy apple pie, an easy crust or no crust. Yeah, of course, with the crust, a traditional pastry crust has to have butter. So if you're not having vegan butter, for Thanksgiving, you can you could try the crust that I have on my site for the pumpkin pie. I think it would work. Um, it has pecans and oats in it. I think that would work. Or of course, you don't even really need to have a crust. You could just bake it in a pie pan without a crust. That would definitely work. Those are some ideas. Also, I have a an apple crisp recipe that is in my plant-based anti-inflammatory cookbook. So if you have that cookbook, you have that apple crisp, that might be a good alternative to apple pie as well. Okay, so let's go on, unless there are any other questions about dishes, to stage two. And that is making a prep chart. So this chart, I didn't give you a template. It's so easy to create. If you could create it just with a paper and pencil. You don't have to put it in the computer, but if you like seeing things neat, you can make it in Word or Google Docs or Excel. And you just create as many rows as are needed to accommodate all the dishes on your menu. So basically, you made a menu either on a back of an envelope or in Word or something. You finalized it. You talked to whoever you needed to talk to. You chatted with ChatGPT, you look through people's sites who you like, and you found your menu. Then you want to list each dish on your menu on that left column. And then if you're lucky enough that somebody's going to make some of it, put their name in. And so for those, you don't even have to fill out the next two because they're just going to bring it and you're just going to have to worry about warming it up, which we'll talk about. So then the third column I use is when I'm going to make it, and we'll talk about can you make things ahead of time? That's the next slide. And then a lot of things for Thanksgiving, for whatever reason, need the oven. So that's why I put just quickly oven temperature and timing. So it's like 400 for 30 minutes. All right, the 350 for an hour and a half. So you're going to have to kind of balance what's in the oven at the same time and what is in at the end. So um, that's how you're going to use all those details to decide on your final sequence. So this is capturing the details you will need for the strategizing, which we'll talk about for stage 3. So pretty simple there. But let's talk about making dishes ahead of time, which is of course a super important way of making your life easier on Thanksgiving Thursday. So there are some things that you can make weeks ahead and freeze. Some people swear by this. Um, I think the majority of dishes are not things you can freeze ahead of time, but there are some. So, for example, the quinoa cakes, for if you completely cook them, um, you can freeze them, and then they're easy to just quickly warm up in the oven, and they even get a little crispy again in the top. So, quinoa cakes work really well in terms of weeks ahead and freezing. Gravy, you can freeze gravy. You can freeze cranberry sauce. For those who took my cranberry and pomegranate class, I made some cranberry sauce, and half of it I ate, and half of it is in the freezer. If you do make pastry pie crusts for Thanksgiving, you can freeze your pie crusts. There are different kinds of cakes and cookies and bars you can freeze, and even at least my vegan whipped cream that's in my cookbook and on my site, you can freeze that. If you know of other things that you make ahead of time and freeze, could you put that in the chat? That would be great so we can see that. Um, all right, Mimi, thank you for sharing your menu. That looks really good. Wonderful. So that looks great. And if anybody wants to share things that they make weeks ahead of time and freeze, please add that to the chat. All right. And then let's move ahead to days ahead. Many dishes can be made a couple days ahead. And if not the whole dish, um, uncooked, or maybe it's just a non-cooked dish, maybe it's a raw dish. You can often prep almost all parts of a dish and have those prepped items in the refrigerator. Jean is saying a sage squash lasagna with zucchini. That looks good too. All right. So many of the things I tried to do some ideas on page 3 of the handout. Um, Dishes that can be made a day or two ahead at the bottom of page 3. Parts of the casseroles or pies. Um, Cranberry sauce, certainly. Sweet potato casseroles, rice pilafs, grain pilafs. Mashed potatoes can be made a day or two early. Dressing, bread dressing, gravies, appetizers, some parts of desserts or all the desserts. You can make, like a pecan pie a day ahead of time, the whipped cream, cakes, cookies. So you can do a lot of stuff ahead of time. So that's what's important for in that chart, the prep chart, stage 2, when to make it. You can stage those out, and I'll show you how I do that in stage 3. And then certain things taste best if they are made the morning of Thanksgiving. As I said, almost everything can be partially or fully prepped, but things that are roasted, like roasted vegetables, those really taste good first day. In fact, roasted vegetables are probably what I give pride of place in the oven right before, because roasted vegetables taste so good straight out of the oven, and they kind of sag a little if you let them sit and heat them. So usually I give priority to roasted vegetables. And certain desserts probably are better made the same day. If they might like a fruit crisp, I would probably make the same day, because that top starts to absorb some of the liquid from the fruit. So there's certain things as you're going through your menu, you might say, yeah, this needs to be made on Thursday. But lots and lots of stuff can be backed up to the Tuesday, the Wednesday, even the weekend before. Um, Also, I had some other pro tips on the prepping. Again, thinking about your priorities, where you want to spend your time because you love a dish, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. So if you can buy things ready made, a few things ready made, go ahead. Sometimes when I know nobody cares about great cranberry sauce, I just buy a can and I don't eat any, because I don't want to spend all my time making a great thing that nobody's going to really appreciate. Or maybe if people expect dinner rolls or bread, you can buy that. Or, if you can, you can buy vegetables that are diced and washed and diced and or cubed. That's fine too. So if you can, if some ready made is okay. um and then you can leave a blank chart row or two in your chart for last minute ideas, and then think about storing all your prep stuff. Think about storage containers or space. If you're hosting a lot of people and you have a lot of food, there may be an issue with how big your refrigerator is if you don't have an extra refrigerator or anything. So just think about that as you think about this stage two, where you're kind of trying to capture all the all the information that you're going to need to strategize that last week of work. All right, let's go on to um, stage three, which is what I call the countdown list. And on page 4 of your handout, I have example roughly based on one of my recent Thanksgivings. And basically, it's a T minus, 30, T minus 60. I mean, you work backwards from when you want to serve dinner. And I know some project planners, like Donna was a professional project manager at a large corporation. She may get out Excel or something else and really, project manage the heck out of that. But as you can see from mine, I just use a Word document. Usually you don't even need the computer. You can do this by pencil. But I do literally, when I'm drafting it, it doesn't take very long, but when I'm drafting it, I literally at the bottom of the sheet of paper put my serving time. And then I use my list, my stage two list, where I've put, I'm making anything right on Thanksgiving Day, and I need it to have, first, it needs to be a priority in the oven. I stick that in and I back up from 5:30 and say, well, it needs to come out of the oven at 5:15. Therefore, I need to put it into the oven at 4:30. So I just start with a few of my dishes, and then I keep adding dishes and times. It doesn't need to be every 15 minutes or something. I just add what I need to add. And then gradually this plan appears. And then that's usually my, final countdown, I call it. You'll see on the right side, I call it the final countdown. This is the last march here. But then I also say what I'm going to make on the weekend and what I'm going to make on Monday through Wednesday as well. And then even on Thursday morning, I put that there too. So that's how I set up my countdown list. Let's see. Someone uses their screen porch for storing food if it's cold enough outside. Yeah, that's great. And a shelf in the garage. That is a great idea because I only have one refrigerator as well. Yeah, you can't do that in Austin, Texas, right? Yeah. So You know, your countdown list can be as detailed or general as you like. I have found over the years that doing anything I can early with my linens, my table setting, my serving ware, I try to do that because man, that comes to back to bite you if you haven't done it. So you can see I don't always use my grandmother's silver, but if I do, I try on the weekend to get that silver out and see if there's enough non-tarnished pieces, and if there isn't, I polish those. And on, depending if your table is free or you're not eating meals at it, Thursday, try to get somebody to help you set the table in the morning. And then I try to, do other things to really help so that those last 30 minutes are not complete chaos. Because I have found if your last 30 minutes are complete chaos, you are not going to enjoy your meals. So it's really important to find a way to get people to help you and to find a way so you know what your game plan is so that you can relax and then you can relax at the table because there's nothing worse than being so like fraught because it was so hard that you can't enjoy the meal. So that is really, really important. So, you can see here on my example, I used to, when I was working full time, I used to take Wednesday off, at least, sometimes Tuesday, but I used to use a vacation day on the Wednesday before. And I tried to really just crank out some of the dishes and some of the prep that I needed to do. I'd usually start Tuesday evening after I got off work and then just try to crank as much as I could. I tried to do my shopping Monday evenings or um, so then by the time I always put when my guests are arriving, if I'm having a special drink or some light appetizers, I want to have that as a target as well. And then usually, although I don't have it here, oh no, I do. I even tell myself when to preheat the oven. And sometimes I have to say, now turn the oven down to 350. So again, you're taking all that information that you have in stage two, the prep chart, and plugging it in so everything gets done. So, if you have a small oven, you want to make sure your pans fit the things you might put in together. Um, and I also, one of the things I like to do besides setting the table is get all the serving bowls out, put a serving spoon or serving fork in each, and I actually literally take a small piece of paper and say which dish is going in which serving. So I'll put green beans in this bowl, mashed potatoes here. That saves so much time at the end. Um, so I don't build in buffer time in my final countdown, but if you think I need to build in some buffer time, you can add 10 or 15 minutes of wiggle room here and there. Um, Last minute warming, you can see here that I talk about, warming certain things in the microwave, warming certain things on the stove, warming certain things in the oven. Like if the oven has been turned off the last half hour, you can cover some things and put those in the oven. Donna, I think you told me a couple days ago you use your rice cooker. Is that right? What do you keep warm in your rice cooker?
I do. Anything that I've made ahead, that that I would reheat in the oven, I have placed in my rice cooker, like mashed potatoes, or if I made applesauce and I want to get that warm instead of serving it cold. A chunky, my family loves this chunky applesauce that I make, and it's the cleanest thing on the table. It's really just apples and lemon juice and a little bit of agave or maple syrup in a crock pot. And I make it 3 or 4 days in advance. And it
Oh,
makes the
nice.
house smell wonderful to start with.
I bet.
But
Yeah.
to reheat it, because I like to serve that applesauce warm, I throw it in a rice cooker and put it on the warm setting. I might start it on like a rice setting to just get it up to temperature, but then after
Right.
that, I'll set it on warm, and
Oh, that's nice.
yeah,
You
it
could
works
do
out
that with
really
an
well.
instant pot too. You could put it on slow cook low, and that would be similar, or a crock pot. I could even imagine if you did like baked sweet potatoes, you could put the trivet in the bottom of the crock pot. I mean, the crock pot,
Yes.
the instant pot, put the warm baked potatoes in and put the top on and put it on slow cook warm. So use, any appliance you can for warming. Um, and again, if you want to if you're going to warm things on the stove, get those saucepans out with a label on what you're going to warm in what. So just, make everything easy for your future self. And certainly, if you have family and friends who are going to help, if they aren't, talk to them about helping. Um, and try to be as specific as you can with what you need them to do, especially in that last 30 minutes. If you want someone to be like, I need you to focus on taking dishes to the table, or I need you to focus on warming up these three things, you know, be the field commander and tell them what to focus on and let them help you. And
Because
then,
really, people
yeah,
love to help. People love to help,
they
don't they?
do.
They really feel a part of the process when you let them help. And I always avoided that in the past. I've always been like,
Yeah,
I got it, I can do this, I can do this.
yeah,
But people love to help and they want to be a part of it.
that's so true. That's so true. And then before we open it up to some other questions, one more slide, I think, here. This first tip was from a Martha Stewart magazine, and I try to do this every time I have people for dinner. Start start with an empty dishwasher and an empty kitchen trash bin if possible. If you can, if you have those volunteers, get them to help you continue to wash and dry and put away dishes throughout the day on Thursday, so that ideally you have an empty dishwasher and an empty dish rack when everybody sits down at the table. I know that sounds ideal, but as close as you can get to that, the happier you will be, the easier the cleanup will be, and also accept help for cleanup too. I know a lot of people say, "Oh no, I'll clean up. Don't worry." Get their help. I know there are certain pieces that you don't want to trust to anyone. That's okay. Put those somewhere. But if you can get their help, get their help. Why not? That's good. But yeah, having your kitchen as clean as possible and having dishes put away really helps. And also the trash, having the compost and the trash, taking those out, sometime near dinner so that you don't have to do that directly afterward. That is help. And, again, letting people help you is great. It helps everybody. All right, so I promised to leave some time for additional questions. We had a lot of great suggestions from you. Are there other things you would suggest to others, or any other questions you have? If your challenge, if we haven't addressed your challenge, oh, oh, there's your torta caprese. Thank you, Donna, for putting that in there. If anybody wants Donna's chocolate tort recipe, I recommend it highly. You can copy and paste it out of the chat, or I will try to put the key parts of the chat in a document that or an email for tomorrow. Are there any other questions that we didn't get to, or any other type of diet or eater that you have a challenge with, please add that to the chat. Or if you are having trouble with the chat, you can come off of mute and ask your question as well. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody. Thank you for those nice words. Anything else we can do to help you with your Thanksgiving planning? All right, well, you all have my email, one of my emails, or you can contact me through my site, Gracious Vegan. Um, I will, yes, I will post the recipe I will share the recipe for the carrots and parsnips. It does use vegan butter. That's why I only make it once a year. If you want to play with it, you can. Um, so please do contact me, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday and a wonderful winter holiday as well. Thank you.
Thank you.